So talk to me a little bit about how how IBM is using artificial intelligence to address sustainability issues.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a technology that's sort of emerging today, new stuff in market too. I think I'm going to frame the conversation for us a little bit in terms of how we approach the space and then, where we apply AI. So I think Melanie mentioned a stat. There's 4,000 odd companies that have declared sort of net zero goals. I came across another interesting stat. 40% of these companies are not going to meet their goals even if they accelerate in the next 7 years the rate at which they're reducing carbon, and even if they 5x it after 2030. So basically, there's a large number of companies that are not gonna meet those goals. So in order for them to do that, our belief is they need to operationalize sustainability. And what that means is create a data foundation. Without data, there is no AI. So you've got to have a really good data foundation to begin that process. And then you've really got to embed the sustainability practice in each one of the areas of the business that you operate. Whether it's like massive power plants, big infrastructure, whether it's buildings, whether it's supply chains, whether it's data centers, all of these need to be instrumented. So the places where we look at making AI investments are, once you've got that data foundation in place, how do you actually operationalize a given process? If you can operate a massive plant much more efficiently, you're much less likely to have disasters and leaks and stuff like that. If you're operating a data center, you definitely want to make sure that your data center is operating in the most efficient way possible. So we do a lot of anomaly detection kind of algorithms with AI. So I'd say that's one big scenario for us. The other one is just increasing the lifespan of assets that you've already got. So what can we do with AI to help customers just increase the lifespan of embodied carbon? I can dig into there's a really fascinating scenario there actually. So one of our customers operates the longest bridge in the world. I think it's over 100 kilometers. Obviously, there's a lot of concrete that goes into that bridge. And I think people in this room probably know concrete is one of the most carbon intensive materials that we produce, as a human species. So, in the way this company did, the company is called Sunderland. The way they actually did the sort of tracking how the bridge is doing is manually. Cracks in the bridge affect the concrete, makes the structure sort of unstable. And so they actually hired mountaineers to go climb up the columns of these bridges and figure out where repairs needed to happen. And we replaced that with the image recognition so that, and we added the software on top of drones. So drones could now actually do the inspection. And what used to take them a few years, you can imagine, like, 100
they get to one end, they turn around and go back the other.
Yeah, so that's a few year cycle. And we've been able to reduce that down to just months. And with that, they believe they've extended the lifespan of that bridge by 100 years. So that's embodied carbon in that bridge that can now survive that much longer. It doesn't have to be produced. So all of that reduces the footprint quite dramatically. So I'd say in terms of broad areas, we've got efficiency of operations. We've got lengthening the life cycle of physical assets that you've got today. We do a lot of work with climate and satellite data as well. So I'd say those are the sort of big areas that we invest in AI.
Maybe dig into a little bit of the satellite data and how that's being used. We heard it referenced earlier today in terms of methane detection. What are some of the applications there?
So there's many different kinds of applications of that satellite data. There's certainly the detection of kind of land usage. I think one of the most fundamental things is just how we use land, what kinds of crops are efficient to plant in what areas. And if you've got enough coverage of satellite data, and we also own the weather company, so we've got years and years and years of weather data. You can correlate those and make pretty accurate predictions about what kinds of crops to grow where. So that's an interesting use of combining just petabytes and petabytes of data and making good decisions from it. We've also actually recently announced a partnership with the NASA. So they have two satellites, Landsat and Sentinel. They call it HLS-2 dataset. I think that's about 70 odd petabytes. So we're using this technology called foundation models in that area to do things like understanding where there's been environmental damage on the planet, where is it that we need to take action like now versus just scientists studying a few spots on the planet. And we believe that we'll be able to predict where floods are likely to happen when we combine that with weather data. We're going to be able to predict the fire zones to avoid and really help companies manage their climate risk in addition to just helping the planet improve.
Yeah, I think the word operationalize is a really important one because it's something IBM has a long history of helping companies do. And now, turning this, saving the idea that you can save the carbon from that bridge, like you're not capturing anymore. It's not that kind of sexy technology, but it is just as effective.
Yeah.
And maybe more so. And every business can sort of benefit from looking at their business this way and saying, look, how can we make it more efficient? And then if we make it more efficient, we will naturally have these sustainability add-ons.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I would consider that just an equivalent to an embodied carbon is just like carbon capture. You've extended the life of an asset that you've got. And we believe companies should take credit for making investments like that. I know today we heard like the doom and gloom kind of story about where we are.
Past that. Now we're going to all optimism from here.
Yeah, exactly right. And I think just being pragmatic about where you choose to invest in these technologies and how you choose to increase your operations will benefit companies today, kind of with what they do.
So maybe people say, you're operationalizing these efficiencies and these supply chains. Like you actually have a product that you use to help companies track sustainability. Just describe a little bit about how that works.
Yeah, definitely. So I mentioned that data layer being kind of a critical one. A couple of years ago, we acquired a company called Envizi. You can consider that kind of the ERP equivalent. It's just instead of dollars being the metric, it's a carbon metric. So it captures carbon data across your entire enterprise. And then the way we connect it up with operational systems is we've got a few products that are already embedded in people's operational areas. So like I said, if you're operating massive machinery, large plants, actually even nuclear power plants, we have customers doing that as well. We've got a product called Maximo that's kind of embedded into that practice. And we've connected the data from that operational process into Envizi. So you can do a few things now. You can visualize it, you can measure it, you can report on it, analyze it, and then adapt what you do in the operational systems to actually make that difference on the carbon footprint. So I'd say we've got Maximo that covers the physical asset side. We've got a product called Tririga that covers real estate, so buildings like this, if you're managing hundreds of them. We've got products that deal with IT data centers as well and help you operationalize making your workloads much more efficient. Turbonomic is an example of one. And we've got a few supply chain products too that sort of help you map and trace your supply chain.
So all this data that you're taking advantage of here, are there standards for that? And if somebody uses Envizi, are they locked into Envizi forever? Can they then go to a Microsoft and use one of their products?
Actually, I'm glad you brought that up. I think that's something that we have to work on just across the industry. There isn't currently a globally well-accepted standard for data, at least not for carbon data. And I think large companies like us, Microsoft, other players in the space too, we've really got to sit down and work out what that taxonomy of data should be. I think today, middleware and integration and transformation technology is at a place where I don't think you're ever locked into one solution. It's more a matter of finding something that works for your particular business needs, in your particular geography, and then taking advantage of standards that exist. And it's up to us, companies like us, to create those standards.
Yeah, I mean, is there another standards organization? Did the ITU start to build that? Like, what partners do you need on board in order to create those standards?
I think we need a few sets of partners, right? I think in the supply chain space, I think we need a consortium there just to help companies understand their data footprint across just a variety of size and scales of companies. So I think in the supply chain space, we need kind of a consortium there. I think large vendors like us that build enterprise software, that build operational systems, that install them in the Fortune 2,000, 3,000, 4,000 type of companies, I think we need to come together to do that too. I'll give you an example in the supply chain space of why this makes a massive difference. So one of the products we operate, it's called the Food Trust Network. So occasionally you might walk into a large grocery chain and you'll see like lettuce just isn't on the shelves anymore. And the reason that happens is because there's been a recall. And what typically a large grocer will do, obviously they're trying to minimize their liability in that space. So they will literally, once they learn of contamination, they'll take that product off their shelves from all the stores in all locations simply because they can't track where that product came from. But if you use, so this network of ours is backed by blockchain to kind of make sure the provenance is known and make sure we know the point of origin. And so once you do this, you can actually find out all the way from a farm all the way to the shelf in a grocery store where a given lot came from. And you can do a very targeted recall, not wasting, just tons and tons of food or any other kind of product that happens to be on shelves.
We talked about another machine processing about using cameras in fields in the agricultural sector to sort of check crops. And we talked about what a huge impact the agricultural industry has on climate emissions. Can you give some examples, like in the agricultural sector?
Yeah, certainly. Like I said, just helping farmers plant the right crop in the right place, I think is one really, really interesting use case. Similarly, on the recognition side, just understanding and targeting fertilizer in a given field at the crops that really need it using image recognition on drones, I think another huge opportunity for us. And we've got farms that do that today as well. I think one of the past speakers mentioned, nitrogen is one of the big pollutants, especially when it gets into the water supply. And the funny thing is, these are all kind of pragmatic things that you don't actually need a multi-million-dollar project to get going. You can start with a really small proof of concept, make sure it works for your environment, and get it going. And I think that's why I'm optimistic about it. I think you can start small, and I think you can actually make a difference, and then decide to scale it.
I think most people think of IBM as this giant enterprise company that is all focused on scale, but you've got solutions that even smaller companies could use.
Absolutely. This supply chain solution I was talking about, we literally have individual farmers that input the data in there, just someone that starts with a small farm. Even on the asset management side, you don't need to be a super large company to take advantage of some of our products. So yes, we know how to scale stuff for sure, and we know how to start small too. And I'm glad you asked the scale question, because it's not just a question of can you work with a small company, yes or no. I think even in large corporations, there's usually small groups of people that are trying to do that innovation, and you need to give them the right tools in the right place to then make it scale in that organization. So yeah, we've got a really, really solid, I'd say design practice around getting started small and then scaling a solution out.
So maybe the way you're using AI is not as transparent as like a ChatGPT and what most people may think about it, but incredibly powerful, incredibly effective. Where do you see AI developing, particularly in the sustainability space? What new insights is it going to enable 5-10 years in the future?
Yeah, 5-10 years, boy, given ChatGPT emerged in 2, that's a long-term projection. I think this notion of foundation models with this encoder-decoder architecture, being able to capture knowledge really efficiently, we're seeing that expand in more and more domains. Chat happens to be a domain that's, you can put in a sentence, drop a few words out of it, and then train a model. We're seeing this now more with image data too, and not just RGB image data, but infrared, ultraviolet kind of data as well. That with a temporal dimension to it too. I think that takes a little bit of innovation in the way a model is trained. But I see this scaling massively to other domains too. And I think models like this will start to learn more of the physics of the world, so that you don't actually have to physically input data from all locations. Things like, we're seeing this in our labs today. You could take one of these models, you could train it on a small part of the globe, and then apply it to a completely different part of the globe, and get a really good assessment of, hey, has there been a flood here? Has there been a fire here? So I think that's what's really going to help us scale. I think this is a fundamentally different technology that kind of has put AI on a different path.
Yeah, it's pretty exciting stuff. Rishi, thanks so much for joining us. I think this has been a great talk.
Thank you so much, folks.
Thank you.